All right, so we are live. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second edition of CS Dialogue. And we are glad we have Samir with us today. Samir is the CEO for G and SBI joint venture. Thank you so much, Samir, for joining us. Today's discussion is how do young managers and future leaders are going to sustain their leadership style in the VUCA world, as we call it. Volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and very, very complex. Uh, Let me start by, just for the benefit of audience, the people from across business schools and companies who are joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your corporate journey from campus to now to lead a company. How
Sure,
has it been?
sure. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm really excited to have this opportunity to talk to a bunch of folks here. So let me, I started my career approximately 20 years ago, and I finished my MBA. I did my MBA from Manchester Business School in UK, and I came back to India and I started working for HCL. I was a senior management trainee at HCL. Did some M&A work for HCL, and then I was moved overseas to work in the US for a joint venture partner, which I did for a year. But really, my career took shape when I joined GE 3 years after I'm still with GE, so 16 years with GE. In fact, today is 16 years with GE, right? So it's a very long time. But haven't felt that I've ever worked for 16 years for GE because every 2 to 3 years I've moved to a different assignment, and I have moved three different countries. Right, so I started off in the US. I was part of GE's corporate audit staff, worked in audit staff for 4 years. The best part of that experience was essentially going around the world doing financial audits and projects. But the best learning there was leadership. Right? So G basically in audit staff builds future financial leaders that go in and become CFOs within the companies. Having done that, so I actually worked in the US for about 4 years after that, where initially I was the CFO of a small portfolio, a financial portfolio in the US. I was then a global FP&A manager for a business that was very large, a very global business, $60 billion in assets, $5 billion in revenue, so a very, very large business. And from there on, I was asked to move to Japan. So became the CFO for G Capital in Japan. That experience was awesome. It was all about, and again, we were acquiring a very large business there. So suddenly the business I went to became three times in scale. Very different learning experience. And during 2 years of that, I was moved to a business called G Capital Real Estate. And again, I was CFO for Asia. And there, the experience was very different. There, it was all about a business going through a very difficult situation, and we really had to turn around the business. So it's, again, that afforded a different experience for me. Wanted to come back to India after that, personal reasons, and wanted to move from the finance side and do a business trip. So I came back to G Capital in India 2011. I was running the auto lease business for G Capital in India. Did some M&A work as well, and then after that, so about a year ago, I was moved to this joint venture. It is a joint venture between G Capital and between State Bank of India. It's a credit card company. We are the third largest credit card company in India, doing extremely well. And I'm the co-CEO for this business.
So 20 years from campus to leading a large business and in a joint venture which has two very large global brands, GE and SBI. Uh, how how do you see, when we talk about VUCA world? I'm sure you are already in that setting. There are a lot of people who are right now listening to us live. Some of them are going to be experiencing when they come into a workplace. Uh, what are some of the traits that you've identified in successful people who do well in this kind of uncertain environment, which has high expectations?
Yeah.
What are those few traits in the last 20 years that you've seen are make or break if you want to really grow and sustain?
So the things that I've seen people do, and I've picked up a lot of these things because I have moved, various roles myself, right? And when you go into a new business, you've got to realize that you are not the expert, right? There are people that have been around in the business for 10, 15 years, and these are the people who really know, what is really happening. Right? So typically, what I advise people going into a new role, I, the first thing is that you need to have a hunger for learning, a huge hunger for learning, right? And I suggest to people what you ought to be doing is that you should create a 30, 60, 90-day plan as soon as you go into a business, right? Which essentially tells you what the people you can interact with, find the experts, talk to them, learn about the business, and come in with an attitude that I don't know, you guys are the experts, I think, right? So a huge desire and hunger to learn is a big thing. Right? Second thing that I tell people that make them very successful is to have a very strong external focus. And when I say that, you may even be in a financial, right? But you've got to know what is going on in the industry outside, what is competition doing, what are players doing. I would never have been a good CFO if I did not know what was going on in the market. Right? If I wasn't aware of what my salespeople were doing. Right? So you've got to, even as a finance person, go out and do some sales calls. So you really know what is going on out in the industry. Right? Hunger to learn, being externally connected with what is going on. The third thing I would say that I find, people that are very successful are the ones that have a sense of urgency and speed in execution, right? Picking things up very, very quickly, fast learning curve, and then execute, right? And you know, I would hate to be in a situation where I would want my managers following up with me as to where certain things are. I would rather be much more proactive going and telling them, look, her, look, here's what you asked me to do. Here's where I'm at. Here's where I'm stuck. Here's where I need help. So execution is another big key, right? So desire to learn, having an external connect so you know what is going on, and very, very fast execution, speedy execution is something that I've seen people do that have made them really, really successful as they dealt with a very volatile and the business.
And when you say execution, and I want to bring in a young manager's perspective, when you interact with young inducts in your team, or maybe not direct reportees, young talent walking into your workplace, since you hire so many people, uh, where do you see current, uh, barometer of where people are vis-a-vis what ready business expects? Do you see them doing well in this execution excellence? So traits like responsiveness, is it, are these things very difficult to find, or is it you're saying we get a level and then we want to be very super successful? We want to really hone these things a lot.
Yeah.
Or do you think these are skills which are not easy to find?
So
What has been your
so
experience?
I will tell you that there's a base set of skills which I believe every individual has, and then the rest is stuff that we teach. Right? The rest is stuff that we take people through trainings, through on the job training as well. So I'll tell you some basic stuff that I find people have, and things that I wish they had more.
Yeah.
Right. So when especially in India, when I interact with other people, uh, very, very smart, very, very, I would say, technologically savvy, right? Um, I would say that intelligent, very, very intelligent, right? Analytical, very, very analytical. As compared, so I've been to look. I worked in 16 different countries as part of audit staff, and as part of
16
different countries, right? As part of audit staff, or as part of, and I can tell you one thing, that the common thread that I've heard everybody overseas say about Indians is that they're very smart, very sharp, analytically very, very savvy, and I see that. Right? Where I see that we need to do a better job of with the workforce that comes in I think communication skills, leadership skills, right? Taking things on that are beyond just your immediate job responsibility, right? Going above and beyond what you're required to do. Those are things that I wish we had a little bit more. Right? Look, some of these things you can teach. Like I said, the communication skills, I learned that as part of that stuff. The leadership skills, you can teach that too. Right? Some people believe that leaders are born, but I actually believe that through all the training that I've gone through, and the training that G provides, you actually do make leaders. But so while you can teach certain things, there are certain things that are very, very inherent. The hunger to learn, like I was talking about. So and wanting to do more and more, wanting to go beyond the job responsibility. Right? That is something that I really had to. Even when I started my career, I had to struggle a little bit because I knew that there was a certain task that I was assigned. Right? I did that task extremely, extremely well. But the feedback that I got was, you're doing that extremely well. But what are you doing to stretch? What are you doing beyond that? Right? And that's what I wish that some of our youngsters had a lot more of as they come into the world.
So, absolutely. So those are great points. So we know what our global perception for an Indian, for a young Indian is, and clearly, you said this. So we may be smart, we may be analytical, but going beyond the call of duty and KRAs and uh, taking the leadership roles and enhancing our communication are really fundamentals if you want to succeed in a global VUCA world. Let's go back to your college days. I'm very curious to understand how, I get this question a lot from youngsters that how do we really choose specializations? So when they are, for instance, they're doing a postgraduate management program, they would have an option to pick up a finance. You've been a CFO, and there is a school of thought that if you want to be a CFO, you pick up an MBA finance, versus if you want to be a CHRO, you pick up a MBA HR. What's your really view? How did you choose your specialization?
Okay, that's a great question. So, look, I'll tell you, I did when I did my MBA, I did in general management. Right? So I only had one extra class on accounting. I did not have any specific financial skills. Right? And my belief is that MBA, it teaches you how to learn. Right? It teaches you how to take any problem, dissect it, figure out what the issues are, and then find a solution and then execute to it to fix the problem. Right? So if you ask me that did I ever think that after doing my MBA general management, would I be doing a CFO role 5 years, 6 years down the line? Absolutely. Right? If you even ask me today, did I think that I would be working, when I started my career, would I be working in Japan? Did I have a plan? Right? It just doesn't work that way. Right? So, look, the thing that I want to tell people is that you pick up, you have to pick up a specialization. Typically, right? You can do general management, or you have to pick up a specialization. Pick up what you enjoy, right? Pick up what you think you really want to do. Will your career pan out according to all the grand plans that you may have? No. If you think your career is going to work like this, it actually goes like this, like this, like this, versus just a straight line that you might have planned. Right? So I'm a firm believer that honestly it does not matter. Right? You pick up the skill sets as you go along. Right? You pick up the skill sets as you go along. If you ask me today, so I'm in a CEO role here, right? And I have multiple functions reporting to me. Am I an expert in any of these functions? No. Right? I have a very good collection person, I have a very good risk person, I have a very good sales person. Right? These are the experts. I know how to manage people. I know how to remove roadblocks. I know how to create a vision so that the business can move forward. Right? And that comes through experience. That comes through all the different roles and assignments. So honestly, I'm a believer that it doesn't really matter. You pick up the skill sets. So what you got to do. So what advice I give people, what you've got to do is you've got to build some domain expertise in one particular area. Right? I chose finance. I did finance for 15 years. I did finance for 15 years. And after you do that, then you can start thinking about moving around to different disciplines. Right? And in this case, I chose choose a business discipline and a business leadership role, and you pick up the skill set that you have and you move into a different domain from there if you want to. Right? But you know, don't be under the impression that if you've got an MBA finance, that is going to get you to a CFO role. May not happen that way. Right? You could have an MBA general management degree like me, and you could get to a CFO role. It's the skill sets that are important that you build along in your life.
So we break that myth. So if I hear you right, you're saying MBA finance is not a mandatory requirement, or a CA is not a mandatory requirement to get into.
I'm not a CA, right? I'm not. I can read through all the accounting standards. I have the experts who can opine on it, right? I have legal people who've gone through. I have tax people who do, right? So they are the experts who know, and they can come and give me different views and opinions.
Yes.
And what I can do is synthesize on the basis of all what the different functions are telling me, and come up with what I think is the right thing to do after looking. And things are great. There's never a clear answer, but you have to know that here are the principles I work on: integrity, right? And I'm going to make sure that we won't go run afoul of the law, etc., etc. Based on those principles, good for the customer, go ahead and do it, right? But I have experts that can give various opinions to me, but I'm not legal expert.
So that's it. So that's very interesting. Let's. I want to bring you to another myth that
Yeah.
I believe in. I want to get that validated either. So a lot of people would believe, and may sound a little controversial because we will have a lot of MBA students here. How important is a postgraduate management degree in today's world to be successful in a management career?
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis somebody who's not done a postgraduate program, just a bachelor program and works, vis-a-vis takes up an MBA route and then gets placement in. So which route is better?
Yeah.
Do we is MBA redundant,
Yeah.
or is it important?
See, it's a great question, and I don't think the MBA is a dumb, right? I think it is a very, very useful degree to have. It really opens up doors, right? It really opens up doors. So, when you're trying to get into a particular organization or into a particular field or into a particular business organization, right? Having done your MBA, people see you in a different way, right? Because you're one of the successful ones who has done the bachelor's degree, has passed the competitive exams, and has gone and then done an MBA from a very decent, right? Beyond that, if you ask me, when I have worked within G, has anybody cared about the fact that I have an MBA, and would they put me into a certain assignment because I have done my MBA? Right? That is not the case, because what happens is the MBA opened the door for me. I was into G, right? And then I started to pick jobs and skill sets along the way, right? Then how I perform became a lot more important, right? But this, my performance was probably, when you've done your MBA, you actually have multi disciplines that you look at. You look at finance, you look at sales, you look at marketing. So as an MBA, as done his or an MBA, you can look at a problem from multiple angles, right? And let me tell you, being in the business world, I have yet to come across a problem that is only singly defined in one particular area. It always covers multiple functions, and then you go. And if it's not the case, that means you're not looking at that, right? You're not looking at that. So what the MBA did for me was help me think through a problem along multiple facets, right? So that's why it was very, very important. Now, there's a third thing which people, I think, don't emphasize or don't think about as much as far as the MBA is concerned, and that is the people that you're doing your MBA with, right? These are the people that as you grow up in your career, they will be going to different organizations, right? They will be having different sort of careers, and they become a very, very strong network, very, very strong, right? And I can tell you, for example, G, audit stuff is almost like after you get MBA, it was a cult, right? So basically, you've got about 300 odd auditors, right? and you're running around the world in all these different audits, high performing, high stress jobs. Um, but after you've gone through a certain level in the audit stuff, typically all the CFOs of NG, typically all the senior people in finance in NG have been through the audit stuff, right? And your network becomes so strong when you say that I'm from audit stuff, they look at you in a different light. Jobs, doors, all that opens up, right? If you're struggling with a problem, you talk to somebody, who's done it somewhere else, as part of audit stuff, you will get everything that you need to know. Same thing with an MBA. You build your network. People that you're with right now because they will really help you. Right? That's one thing which I think is very, very underrated as we go through an MBA program. And I feel that. I'll personally, I'll tell you, for example, you know, I did my MBA in Manchester Business School in the UK. Now, when I've come back here to India, I have felt somewhat handicapped. And when I say somewhat handicapped, because I can see the IMs, the four schools, I mean, I can see all of those networks that are working extremely well across organizations. If I want, some help with something, and I talk to my folks here, so, I have a friend who my MBA together with in so organization. I'm going to contact that individual, right, and figure out what we can do. So those networks, I am missing, right? So that is something that the students should should
Really
not
well.
should really value and should not undervalue.
So it's beyond a degree. It's really what you're saying. How to learn is what MBA is teaching us, and the real power of that network that you create while you're on campus, 10 years down the line, that's what is
Absolutely,
real value.
absolutely, absolutely.
Fantastic. Now we are already getting a few questions, and
Sure.
if you want to ask us questions, we could take them live, and you could tweet your questions with the hashtag CS Dialogue, and we'll pick up your questions and ask Samir to respond to them. So there are some questions that I'm going to pick up. There is a question that we've already received, and this is from Bridge Raman Bansal from Ford School of Management. And you know, again, back to what you were saying, the question is how important is versatility in an individual? Uh, when they come to workplace.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
so
yeah. So, yeah, look, my feeling is that you need to build some domain expertise, right? And when I say that, uh, you know, versatility could be viewed in various different ways. One would say that, I want to be able to do everything, right? Or I want to be able to do something in a specific area. Right? So let me tell you my G experience from there. Um, about I would say 10 years back, GE was at a point where we said, every 2 years you need to move businesses. If you want a career to go ahead, you need to move possibly functions, right? And you need to keep moving so that your career moves ahead and you learn as much as you can about it. So, great. So what we had were a bunch of folks that were um, that knew a whole lot about or knew something about a whole lot of different areas, but they were master of none. Right? Master of none. They did not know one thing that they could do extremely. Right? Suddenly, as you're talking about the vocabulary, right? Suddenly the whole world and the environment has changed. What has really happened is that because the world has been moving so fast, so changes are happening so quickly, right? So you really need to build domain expertise in a business and domain expertise in a particular niche, right? That is where you will really be valued, and that's why you will realize it, right? So I always encourage people, just like I did, spend 13, 14, 15 years in a particular function. Now, I will caveat that by saying that, for a lot of folks, you're not sure which function you want to go in initially, right? You're not sure, is this the right thing for me to do? Try try it out, right? You initially, when you're very early on in your career, maybe you try finance for a couple of years, you try marketing for a couple of years, but then at some point, say, I'm going to build my expertise in this particular area, do everything that you can in that particular function, and then look at moving on. So versatility might be good because you may think that my boss thinks I can do a whole lot of different things, but I view it from a different angle. Domain expertise, business expertise, do that before you move on. Because otherwise, when times get tough, I find that people that are very generic in nature and do not have specific skill set that we're looking for are the first ones we say that, that person is really not doing well, right? And what are they doing in the particular role that we're doing? So we need experts. We need experts.
So you have it, so specialization and being able to create yourself as a domain expert real has first value. But on top of that, if you have versatility and you have, best of a few other things as well, that's adds value. But specialization doesn't take away the value. So I have another question now. I'm going to quickly take this because this one is again connecting back to your academic background. I want to relate to this is somebody. This is Gulu Blani, who's the head of HR from MB Technologies. Gulu has asked. I'm going to rephrase this question. He's in a way asking, are engineers going to rule the world in the future? So how important is a science background or an engineering background?
Yeah.
Because people perceive that those are the folks who have high logical and reasoning abilities. So if that's the kind of person who's going to lead the world, is that something fundamental across functions that you see?
Okay. Look, it's a great question, and I'll tell you what. You know, different disciplines may be good for different types of roles or types of functions, right? So, will engineers rule the world in the future? That might be taking it a little bit too far. But for example, the creative folks, typically they come through other areas rather than just the science and technology, right? So, look, I'll tell you what science or engineering is, right? Science and engineering, you're right. Analytical skills, right? They typically tend to be very good finance, very, very good finance, right? Because you can see through the numbers and things like that, right? So, if you're doing an engineering, you don't want to be an engineer, but you do an MBA, finance may be a good bet for you. But does that mean that you will rule across, multiple functions, or you will, rule across everybody else? That's not true at all. When I look at my leadership team, that works for me, right? I don't have any engineers other than me, right?
So it relates to what you're trying to say.
So what? No, but see, I did not get this role because I had done my engineering or I had done my MBA, right? It is the skill sets that you're building along the way. All the and when I say the skills, all the development areas that you have, right? You have some strengths, you have some development areas, you continue to work on them diligently, and you continue to acquire new skill sets, right? So for example, I'll tell you, when I first started working with HCL, right? I hated sales. I did not I did not want to go and sit in front of a customer. Right? I thought selling a laptop to a customer was just the most difficult thing to do. My boss forced me to go to Mumbai and said, you know what, you need this experience, you figure it out. Right? I went there and I still hated it. Right? So I just thought I was not for this. Until now, right? In the last two roles that I have done, I have forced myself to go and meet customers. I forced myself to go to customer services because I want to hear what these people are. And they may be telling me things that are not right, but I need to fix. But I need to hear. I need to hear. Right? So again, it was a skill set that I've built along the way. Right? Would that have come from engineering? No. Right? It didn't come from it. So a degree is very important. It opens doors for you, like I said. Right? Will one degree make you rule, everything else? Not necessarily. Right? So my predecessor here wasn't an engineer. Right? So you could have all kinds of it is the skill sets, the opportunities that you pick, and how you make the best.
Very interesting that you say that. Uh, makes me think of another point that when we really talk about careers, and you know, if you look at our Indian demographics, most people or a lot of majority of people are picking up engineering as the background, and then they end up doing a management degree on top of it. So an
Yeah.
IIT, IIM is a
Yeah.
typically known as a good background to have. Uh, would you really say that it's not really uh, an engineering degree which I pick up now and then uh, would lead me to a career in finance, for instance? Because when folks are choosing a particular degree, it's not maybe the best thoughtful choice that they're doing. They're doing it by peer pressure. They're doing it for many other reasons, for the lack of information at that point in time. So I have a twofold question. One, if I have chosen a degree, and like you picked up the role in HCL for sales, you thought at that point in time that it was not something that you enjoy doing, but you value it now after 20 years. So, one, do you think corporates are going to be okay with the fact that I started somewhere, but now I am aspiring for something else, which may not have a clear correlation?
Yeah.
Uh, and second part of what you were saying, I want to ask you: do you think uh, for being a successful leader, one should definitely have some exposure of sales and marketing or customer service during their initial years? Do you think
Yeah.
that adds great value, or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so?
All right. So let me address let me address the second question first. Um, so does sales and marketing help or not? See, I'll tell you what sales and marketing. To go back to what I earlier said, having an external focus, extremely important. Extremely important. You want to know what's going on in the world out there, what competition is doing. Right? So having a sales and marketing, uh, you know, experience gives you that natural way to get that external, right? It is very hard to get it in other functions, very hard to get it in functions, right? You could get it in customer services, but very hard in certain functions to get because that is not your natural job, right? So I would say getting some experience at some point in time really helps, right? Now, when I did it, I only did it for a month, right? And I said, that's enough. Okay. But as I went through my finance goals, what I would do is I would, go on calls with sales, with my sales people, right? When they were going to meet with customers, I would ask them to take me along with them, right? There have been meetings where, so as a finance leader, I was responsible for pricing for customers. I was responsible for returns that we would get, and then a whole host of processes that ultimately impact the customer. And one sales leader took me to a meeting with a bunch of salespeople that were very disgruntled with the way that our processes are. Right? And I can tell you that was a huge eye, saying that, I'm sitting in my office dreaming up of all these processes that have no relevance to the customer. Because ultimately the business is there to the customer. Right? No relevance to what the customer wants. Right? And that really opened my thinking quite a bit. So I think some exposure is great. Does not mean that all of you then step into and say that I'm going to do a sales and marketing role before I do anything else. I'm not advocating that, but whatever domain expertise you've chosen, whatever area that you've chosen, I would ask and encourage people to actually go and do something related to the customer. Part of your role, right? Do something related to the customer. That will go a very long way in you to get me started. Now, what was your first question?
The first question was: is it fine to change directions?
Yeah.
So pick up a degree and
Yeah.
then realize, this is not what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Is that going to really have an effect? Because that's really why people think so much.
My view is when you're very early on in your career, I don't think so. Right? I don't, because I think at that point in time you're really trying to think. Nobody has the world set out for the next 20 years. Right? Nobody really knows. You may have the grandest plans, but things will work out very differently. Right? So if someone comes to me and I'm hiring somebody and they say, well, I did my engineering. I worked for a couple of years. It didn't work out. It was not what I was looking for. And then to make a change, I then did my MBA. and now I'm really interested in this, right? As long as they have a very logical thought process of what they've gone through, and it makes sense, right? I'm never going to dismiss it, right? It has to be logical, it has to be thought through, and there has to be certain strategy and vision to it. So I don't think it's, in fact, I personally feel that maybe I should have tried, very early on in my career, a few different things, right? A few different things, to see if that was really what I wanted to do. Right now, granted, my career, from my perspective, I've really loved it. I've enjoyed it. I've done all these different countries. I've learned, a tremendous amount. I work with people from, all over the world. Right? It's fantastic. But maybe if I had done a few different things, earlier on, could I have been, a different skill set, or could I have gotten different skill set that I could have leveraged? Sure. In my country, sure I could have. Right? So I don't view that as a negative if people at some point decide they want to do this thing.
So you would rather suggest early on is the time to experiment, and then when you're clear,
Yeah,
go on
absolutely.
and build that domain
Absolutely.
expertise.
Absolutely. And a lot of companies, what they will do now, especially large companies, so even G has programs like that where you bring people in, after you finish your MBA, right? So we have a fantastic program called the Financial Management. And what you do is, while it is supposed to be in the finance stream, over a 2-year period, you actually get different businesses to go to and different assignments to go to, right? Different parts of finance, and one of those assignments, which is typically lasts for 6 months, you will do another thing.
Oh,
Right? That's a great way. And a lot of companies do that. That's a great way to know, I'm trying different businesses. You try 3 or 4 different businesses. Which business do you really think you're excited about? Right? So ultimately, when you finish the program, which business do you want to go to? And then try at least one different function to say, all right, I chose finance. Is it really what I want to do? If it's not, then maybe I try something else. Right? So that's a great way to do it.
so that's a great point. So for people who are doing their studies right now, so the takeaway that I can think of is really pick up a project each semester, and pick up a project which is very different from what you were doing earlier. And by the end of 2 years program, you will have a host of opportunities and view. So you'll have a bit to
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
see where you want to really go.
Actually, that's a great one. So one of the things I encourage people to do, which all of you should think about in your career, right? As you settle down in the first year in your first role, right? And you want to try different things, go to your manager, go to your boss, and say, I have some time. I want to do a project in so and so particular project, right? I will do it on top of what I'm doing, right? But I want to learn about that. That will be viewed firstly, your manager will love that because you're stretching, right? It helps, you as an individual a lot because you are then testing a different function. The other function is also testing, right? So if you want to move to that particular function, if you do a good job, the leader there will say, you know what, great person. I want this person in my team, right? So all of those things work extremely.
Fantastic point. So not even in college, you're saying, even if you're already at the workplace, you could try this out, and it would be a great opportunity for you to
Absolutely.
within the organization get that fit. I've got another question from Sujata Krishnamurthy. She's the head of HR for a company called Radio Mantra.
Okay.
And her question is, what is the role of a leader in managing M&A?
Yeah.
And particularly, she's mentioned since an M&A brings about a huge cultural change, how does a leader address it? And what's your experience since you've gone through M&A?
Yeah. So look, I've done quite a few M&A transactions. One I did in Japan that we saw all the way through to integrating that business into our business. Right? And then I have done other transactions where we haven't taken it all the way, but we've gotten to a certain stage and we decided we don't do it. Right? But my experience with the Japan one really opened up like my eyes. So if I just focus on the role of a leader. So for me, I view M&A as one of the growth opportunities for us beyond just the core opportunity that we have. Also is an opportunity for me to acquire, a certain product or a certain type of skill that I don't have in my current business, and it will take too long to do it, so I just try to go and buy, right? But once a strategy is decided from a leadership perspective, right, a leader really has to drive the entire M&A process. And I tell you, as far as G is concerned, our M&A, any M&A that we do is a process, right? We take everything down to a process. We have the tools. We learn everything that we've got to do. We've done more than 100 acquisitions in G Capital, right? So we know how to do stuff. So a leader sort of takes all the different functions together, works through the M&A, does all the valuation work with the teams and all that, right? But then once the business is acquired, the integration work takes the most of it, most of it, and that's the most important part. Most important. The work just begins there, and that's what I saw. Right. So what Flat is talking about in terms of the leader's role in the cultural integration is enormous. It's huge, right? The tone comes from very top. So the first thing that you have to decide as a leader is, do I want this organization that I acquire to have its own identity, the identity that it has right now, or do I want to put my identity on this company, or do I want to take that entity and put that? So that's a very difficult decision to make based on a whole host of factors. But
How do you make a decision on this?
so see, um, at the end of the day, what I always look at is what will derive more benefit for the customer, right? So from a customer viewpoint, if they see a particular brand, right, or a particular product as the one that is absolutely key, I would rather keep that identity of that particular. Now, having said that, there are so G has a very strong brand known globally. So we typically when we go in, we try to sort of bring in G's identity into the mix, but we will leave some businesses for some point in time, or even if locally a business has a better brand, we feel like but the cultural part of it, right? In terms of what the leader has to do. The first thing is that there's a lot of fear in the organization.
Exactly.
Right? There's a lot of fear. People don't know what is coming next, right? People don't know whether the jobs are secure. They don't know, what this acquisition is going to lead to, right? And that is the first thing everyone needs to do, right? So you have to communicate. And that top five things you've got to do with people, communicate, right? You have to be out there every day, town halls, doing round tables, right? Sending out messages to people, doing blogs, doing videos, but getting the message. Don't assume that if you've done it once or twice, it will reach down, right? You have to get the message down as to why the businesses are together. Dispel that fear, right? So that starts off, and that's a very sort of then. So one is fear about my job, what is going to happen, right? Then the second thing comes, all right, now all these other things are going to be imposed upon me. My role is going to change, even if it's not integrated. My role is going to change. When my benefits change, so all the basic stuff that I have, safety, security, all that change, right? So all of those things you've got to make sure that you work. And in some cases, there will be things. They could be open, honest, right? So if people will see through it if you are not telling them to do, right? If you're not telling them exactly what is going on, they will see through it. And the grapevine is much stronger than what you think it is, right? So they will know a lot of things that you do not want to tell them. And so the best thing is honesty is the best policy. Go and tell them what you think is. So leaders' role is extremely important, and it just doesn't stop at the communication phase. I mean, you have to, we typically when we go and acquire companies, same thing, we come up with 30, 60, 90-day plans for integration, and you have to follow that integration plan. So when I was So I was the CFO there, right? But the leadership team every week, right? Every function went through details of the integration. What have I done? What have I completed? What issues am I facing? What more do I need to do? Where do I need help? Right? So that integration plan, because when you acquired the business, there were certain assumptions you made. Integration plan makes sure that you achieve those assumptions. That is why the business is going together, right? So you have to follow that to the you have to follow.
In some examples, now picking up a little more detail in M&A situations, uh, places where in an Indian context, M&A versus maybe another country like Japan. What are some Indian, uh, what are some specific issues which you would have faced only in India
Yeah, 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 yeah.
versus globally?
Yeah. See, so firstly, I tell you from an M&A perspective, all the rules and regulations
Hmm.
that are out there
Hmm.
are very, very, right? So you have to sort of work through all of it, right? See, I'll tell you, and maybe I can talk about it in the Japan context. And honestly, I'll tell you, across the world, it's very, very similar, right? The basic things that are asked for from an M&A standpoint, either by the company that is acquiring or the company that is being acquired, are very similar across the world. So I don't see. So for a company that is being acquired, some of the biggest issues and concerns are what happens to that entity after, what happens to the business, what happens to the people, right? In Japan, there is this lifetime employment thing, so you have to give guarantees, or you have to say that none of the jobs are going to get into, right? Or you'll have homes for all these people, right? And in that typically tends to be an ask. You've seen the news, about the Alstom acquisition by GE. The same thing, the French people have the same thing, that they want jobs to be secure and government sort of right. So I don't see very huge differences in terms of how you go through the process of an acquisition. Yes, you will have certain rules and regulations that are going to be fairly different, right? And there's a process that you've got to follow that may be somewhat different from, and things that you have to watch out for is slightly different from what you do.
But largely it's the same.
The basic requirements that you have typically tend to be very, very from a people's perspective, from what people are looking for from the applications.
So the basic fear of new or unknown cuts across all countries.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So again, if you want to ask us any questions, we are still taking live questions, and you could send us through Twitter. Tweet your questions with the hashtag CS Dialogue, and we'll pick up your questions and ask Samir to respond to that. Now let me. Another question which has been asked by a student from Symbiosis Pune, and if I read this right, the question is very complex. It's saying in the VUCA world and the business setting, perception versus reality for an individual. How important is perception or PR as he's putting it?
Yeah.
For an individual to be successful.
Yeah.
Versus you could be good but you're not perceived as equally good.
Yeah.
Where is the difference?
Yeah. It's a great question. Look, I'll tell you. Reality is reality. At some point, people will catch up on the perception. Right? They will know that if you so let's say that you are an individual that is not doing a very good job, right? But you create the perception around you through the things that you say that essentially make people believe that you're working very hard, you're doing a lot, and the achievements you have are huge. Right? You do that for 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. At some point, you figure that out. At some point, people figure it out, right? So the reality of doing the right thing, doing a great job, fantastic job, that always stays. And I can tell you, what I have found, right, is when I worked overseas for, 14, 15 years of my career, and this is specifically for doing this, we are very good, hardworking, very good at work, and we talk about it. Um, we are typically don't tend to be as good communicators as what we see, people in the industry, right? Not as good. And you know, so one of the things I have learned, if you're doing a very good job, you have to be able to communicate that out extremely well, right? So for example, I sit through at least, I would say, 4 to 5 presentations in a day, right? 4 to 5 presentations in a day, um, where people who have just started their career to people who have worked for me, who've done presentations for a long time, and the work may be fantastic, but at the end of the day, how you communicate what you've done is also very important, right? And if you can't communicate to me as to exactly what you, and maybe a great thing that you've done, but I will not walk away with a sense that something fantastic is different, because you've got to communicate it right. So that's one thing. So while we're talking of perception versus reality, right? You've got to do your execution. You've got to do all the right stuff. Don't just create a perception about it because it'll catch up on you. But I would still encourage people that if you're doing great things, you ought to go out and communicate, because people will not, right? When you are, as many people that I meet on a daily basis, I do not know what a call center agent or somebody else do, on a particular call. Right? I do not know that because I'm doing other things, right? So if you're doing something fantastic, you have to be able to communicate that out in a nice way, not in a way of it, but you have to do that.
So perception standalone may not be uh, something that can last you long, but if you are good and not perceived that equally good, then it's a lost opportunity for yours for growth. People aren't going to spot it. You'll have to really go out there, communicate, and ensure they know what you're doing.
Actually, for all my career, I have kept my head down and I have worked, right. I mean, I never, and that's what one of the great things I find about you is that it's about what you bring to the table. It is not about incorrect perceptions. It is not about the politics. It's not about who you know, etc. All of that is, a young person coming in, starting early in the career, done a fantastic job. You know, I mean, I personally send out thank you notes to people when they've done a very, very good job, right? So we get all of those from our pitching, right? So people really watch out for good talent. It's not about perception. It's about what you do.
So before I get into my last question, which is more to do with what you really look at in talent. This is a great culture. What you're saying
Yeah.
is a great culture, and it's nothing new. It's world over, G is known for its culture. What are some of the tips if you were to give, based on your experience of rising through, different structures within G? What are some of the key things which you spotted were reasons of this great culture?
Yeah.
If we were to look at other organizations to look at G and adapt
Yeah.
and get kind of similar culture,
Yeah.
what are those few key things in terms of what you saw? Those were reasons for this culture.
Right. Okay. So look, um, first thing I would say is that we've got a very, very compliant culture. Integrity is huge. Absolutely. Right? I can go excuse me, sleep at night. Right? I can sleep very well at night because I know that G has a compliant culture and we all follow certain rules, regulations, integrity. There's nothing going on. And I can trust the people that work for me because everybody is following my work, right? Then what happens is that it becomes all about winning in the marketplace, about your execution, doing things for your customers, doing the right things for your customers versus worrying about all the integrity and the compliance issues that you have to worry about. Right? So one I would say integrity is absolutely huge. And I'll tell you, and people would read everything that is going on in India right now.
Hmm.
and the issues that some of the non-compliant companies face and being in the news, I would not want to work for a company. I would not want to go and be a leader or a CFO in a place where I have to watch my back every time. I'm afraid that someone's going to come to me and say, well, you know what, you did this wrong, and I'm going to take it again. Right? That is one thing that I get a lot of comfort in GE that the second thing I would say is the focus on people
Hmm.
and the development that we that we that we give to people. So I'll give you one particular example. And this I was I was very pleasantly surprised. So I joined the Star, and you get assignments, right? So every 4 months you have a different assignment. Could be anywhere in the world, and you have a different team that you go work with. And at that time, e-commerce was huge, and we were doing some e-commerce projects. I'd worked for HCM. I really want to do an e-commerce project. So you have to give a choice, right? You say that this is my first choice, second choice, and third choice. So I went to my audit manager and I said, look, I really want to do an e-commerce project. Really exciting, and that's one area I'm very interested in. I have done similar things in HCM. My background, because I came from the IT company, I've done very similar things, and that should give me a good shot at getting the project. And I'm going to write that in my write up that I want that project, and I have experience.
Hmm.
You know what she said? She said no. She said you are here to develop. If you already know about the e-commerce service, you're here not start to develop. You already know about that. What are you going to learn, right? So I'm not going to assign you a project where you already know everything that there is to know about it. You've got to think about an area that you do not know about so that you can develop in that particular area. That's where you're going to build your skill sets, right? So that's one of the big things that I sort of felt that from a cultural perspective, it's all about the development of and I can tell you, a lot of the jobs that I've gone to in G, have I felt that I'm ready for a role like that? When you go in, suddenly you're thrown into it. It's almost like the whirlpool, right? There's so many things going on. You may think you know GE, but different business, different country, different environment, all in with you, right? But that is one of the things I found that the company takes notes on, right? There will really good people who've been there, who you work with, but the company will take that, right? And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the company. So strong compliant culture. When you look at compliance, it becomes all if you're not going to worry about compliance, it's only about the customer, doing the right thing for the customer, right? And then the focus on people development, taking that some people and putting them in the roles that you like.
So the appetite of taking risk with people doing new things
Absolutely,
is great.
absolutely,
Great. So
absolutely.
so we're about to come close. Like all good things, this also has to come to an end. But one last question before we
Sure.
close. Uh, when you look at hiring people in your team,
Yeah,
so I'm going to come right at that.
yeah,
What are some of the fundamentals that you would look at in a leader when you hire?
yeah,
And so, what are few things that you would hire for, and what are few things that you would not hire for?
yeah, yeah,
What are
yeah,
those?
yeah. So, good question. So, I'll the first thing as there's certain things that I look for in a leader as far as base is concerned. Right? The first thing is that integrity, compliance, is a huge hallmark of Jewish culture. One of the things I look for to ensure that the person that is going to come into my team is actually going to be compliant and will follow the laws and regulations.
Sure.
Right? Even if there's a gray line, not even coming close to it. Right? So that's one thing that I let's say that you know sort of is
Fundamental.
fine, right? That's fundamental. Then for the other things that I look for is when I'm hiring an individual, right? Are they very so I'm talking leadership,
Yep.
right? Are they very independent, right?
Okay.
Are they ones that will that I have to follow up with constantly as to what's going on? Is their execution good, right? Have they done things that have gone way beyond and have taken the company that they worked into the next level, right? Or have they only focused on small little things, not worrying about how do you catapult my organization to the next level, right? That's what I would look for in a leader. The other thing that I look for in a leader is strong focus, right? So whatever job, so look, if I'm interviewing a CFO for right, I will ask the CFO as to how much time they spend with us, right? What do they know about the industry, right? Things like that. I expect people that, CFO, whatever the individual might be, would have spent some time with us, right? I would expect a person at leadership level would have come very thoroughly prepared for the interview, right? Would know about my business, would know about my industry, would ask me one thing I really do not like is when I give the opportunity to someone at the end of an interview to ask me questions, right? And it's blank, right? The show of all questions have been answered, right? That means you're not thinking. That means that you're not sort of really into it, right? So those are the kind of things that I look for. Things that external focus we talk about, right? External focus is hugely important. And from a leadership standpoint, I also look at you know. So one favorite question is how do you spend your time? What is a typical and a typical leader needs to be spending 30, 40, 50% of the time, right? Developing them, going through work or whatever it might be, but a majority of the time on developing people, right? And if they're not spending enough time from a leadership standpoint with people, that's another problem. When you're hiring at leadership level, you expect that they have a base in terms of the knowledge and skill set. Beyond, so I will typically not get into. So if I'm hiring a finance person, I will typically not, as a CFO, I will not get into any financial type areas for discussion. It's all the other stuff that's important.
Does that also hold true for entry level talent?
No, so for entry level talent, right, that's a different thing. Right? No, I would expect a person is from an execution standpoint. So base things I would look for execution. I would look for being able to take a problem, dissect it, and actually find solutions for it. Right. I would expect that they have a certain level of analytical skills that they bring to the table. Right. I do not expect at that point in time that they would know everything about presentation skills, they would know everything about leadership, all those things, like I said before, can be done, right? So, but I look for execution, I look for have they gone above and beyond, right? Have they in their MBA, right, or wherever, have they just done their MBA degree, or did they go out and do some volunteering? Did they go out and spend, like you said, projects with organizations, right, on their own time? They did do something that was above and beyond, because then that tells me that's, this individual coming in, there's that, exactly, there's drive, there's ambition, and there's determination. This individual coming in is doing the same thing to their role.
Fantastic. So great. That's it for this edition of CS Dialogue, and I'm sure we wish we had more time with you. There are still so many questions unanswered, and we hope to catch up with you again for another session with your request. Uh, so this one just a small token of our appreciation, just for taking time out.
Yeah.
Just
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It was great to have this dialogue, and I'll be very happy to do it again. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And so this is it. Log on to careerlaunchpad.in/CS dialogue for updates on our future session. And for now, keep learning and keep growing in your career. Thank you so much for joining.